History gets polished, edges smoothed. But revolutions are not clean. They are born in fire, in smoke, in men who hold the line when fear claws at the ribs. Victory was not inevitable. The revolution was forged in war. But it is understood in conversation, around tables, between friends, with books open and arguments alive. This is Rogue Island, ground truth of the American Revolution.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Rogue Island. I'm here with my buddy Bjorn Brusckshaw. I'm Ben Powers. Bjorn, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great too. We were talking a little bit before the recording, and you have identified that I'm uh, knocking out a bunch of different projects simultaneously. It's been a minute since we've done a Rogue Island, so I'm excited to get back to this.
Absolutely. I know we've been working on our project coming up for Boston History Camp as well. So
Exactly. And this is a perfect time to give History Camp a shout out. So, History Camp Boston 2026 is coming up the weekend of 7 August. I urge you to go to uh, Google and just Google History Camp Boston, and it'll come up, and you can get tickets and come out and hear some amazing speakers, as well as Bjorn and me. I'm not saying we're the top billing by any stretch of the imagination, but there's some really heavy hitters. And if you have any interest in U.S. history, especially leaning towards the American Revolution, although that is not exclusively what's going to be talked about, I urge you to go and check it out. But today we are going to talk about the American Revolution, with this being Rogue Island, and we are going to do the third and final installment of our Benedict Arnold trilogy. So, if you're ready to jump into that, Bjorn?
I'm ready whenever you are, Ben. I've been excited for this for a while.
All right, here we go. Okay, so Benedict Arnold, everybody knows he's the traitor. That if you know nothing else about American history, if somebody betrays your confidence, you're like, oh, that dude is such a Benedict Arnold. Everybody understands that he was a traitor. But what did that treason actually take shape as? What did the man actually do? Bjorn, what do you think of when we say Benedict Arnold?
So I'll tell you a quick funny story. I remember being in elementary school and them teaching us about the Revolutionary War and Benedict Arnold. And our teacher stated, and I remember this clear as day, stating that if somebody deserted to the other side, they automatically called them a Benedict Arnold. So now that stuck in my head for a while. But, Benedict Arnold to me, and I just mentioned it, is yes, I think for a majority of it, he had good intentions, but he had to realize like I just mentioned a little while ago, Nathaniel Greene died broke. He sacrificed so much, where Benedict Arnold kind of kept pushing for what he deserved, and what he deserved when the cause was greater than what he deserved.
And you hit the nail on the head. This isn't about somebody who is just on the face of things always evil, but it is about somebody who could not put the cause ahead of himself. He felt that whatever sacrifice he made had to be compensated. And if it couldn't be compensated in his preferred method, he was going to get compensation somehow. Um, I love this phrase that's associated with his treason, the treason of the blackest dye. The quote, treason of the blackest dye was yesterday discovered about his plot to surrender the plans to West Point was recorded in an orderly book in Lord Stirling's division under General Greene, who was taking command at West Point once Arnold was removed from command, or removed himself from command, so to speak. But I just think that that has that historical ring to it. It's very 18th century. It's very almost Shakespearean in
Yeah.
how they experienced Arnold's betrayal. So we all know, leaving off from your discussion in part two of our three-part series, that Arnold is indisputably the hero of Saratoga. He literally leads the charge into the redoubt at the Battle of Bemis Heights, which breaks the back of the British, and within a few days they surrender, and Burgoyne's army is taken off the chessboard of strategic consideration in the War for Independence. And although everyone calls Gates the hero of Saratoga, we know that Arnold was the battlefield catalyst for that victory. And go back and check out Bjorn's discussion of the Battle of Saratoga if you want more details. But he is wounded terribly in the same leg he was wounded at Quebec, and his combat career is basically over at this point. So he's This is a guy who has made his bones as a combat commander, who is now so grievously wounded that he is unable to resume a combat command. And he already feels as though his merit has not been properly recognized by Congress. He feels that he has notoriety. People know who he is, but he's almost embarrassed by the fact that people know who he is because he does not have the laurels and honors that he feels should be associated with his achievements. So he's nursing a wounded leg and he's nursing a grievance as we roll into 1778.
Hey Ben, did he ever try and get back out on the battlefield after his wound?
Well, I mean, he kind of did. If we look at it from the standpoint that he was when he went over to the British, he had two different combat commands where
Yeah,
he did really well, both
yeah,
in Virginia and in Connecticut. But he was you got to imagine that he's going through his healing process. It's already the end of 1777. Effectively, the campaign season's over when he gets that wound in Saratoga, and he
yeah.
spends 78, 79 going into healing, and then while he is healing, that's when Washington, which we'll go to in a minute, puts him in command in Philadelphia, almost as a way to assuage his hurt feelings. Like, hey, this is a very important military governorship, excuse me. It's not a combat command, but it is a post of honor. So it was almost as though he never went back into combat as a patriot. That's a true statement. But if you look at his healing timeline, independent of the treason aspect, he probably wouldn't have been physically capable of going back into combat until 1780 in any event.
Gotcha.
This is the memorial of his leg, the only honorable part of him that is memorialized at Saratoga. And the quote that I have become a cripple in the service of my country, that term cripple, it describes how he viewed himself. He was no longer a contributing member of the cause. And not only is he physically crippled, he's like morally and mentally crippled. He's unable to provide for his family. He's unable to lead men in combat. He's unable to earn further glory. So this is not a man who can look back on his achievements with a sense of satisfaction. He's always looking forward, like, how do I recover my fortunes? How do I hit the next big thing? And not only does he feel physically wounded, he feels mentally and morally wounded that he's going to be unable to achieve more at this point. He's in a very, very dark place in his military career and in his mental health. I mean, that's a Ben Powers read. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but there's no doubt in my mind that he was in a very dark mental space after his wounding. So we've discussed his grievances in the past, that he felt that he deserved not only higher promotion, he was eventually promoted to Major General by Congress, but that he should be a senior officer. Officers of the same rank, if you got your rank before me, even though we were both Major Generals, you outrank me. And he was very low on the Major General list. Washington was able to convince Congress to promote him to Major General, but he was not placed ahead of other men who had earned that promotion earlier, whom he felt were lesser combat commanders. And we harp on this, but it goes without saying, if we were taking other considerations like seniority, what state you're from, and how many troops that state had contributed to the Continental cause, the political aspects behind how Congress managed promotions, if we were just looking at pure combat performance, I don't think there's a professional soldier or any fair-minded person who would say that Arnold didn't deserve to be at the head of the list, but that's not how Congress managed promotions. And Arnold is not the kind of guy to pragmatically say, "Oh, I understand the political considerations. I understand how this helps the cause for these men from other states to be promoted ahead of me." He's like, "No, I'm the best, and that needs to be recognized, and you're not recognizing it, so you're insulting me. My personal honor has been affronted by you people."
So pretty much he wasn't a fan of the political aspect. He wasn't a political person. He believed the best person to do the best job should be out on the front line. Or I
Exactly.
should say should
Done
be
it exactly right. Done and dusted. The man did not have a political bone in his body. And he actually gets in trouble for that, as we're going to see. He's has these grievances, the real grievances that his combat performance is not being rewarded, and the fact that Gates has not given him the due he deserved for his performance at Saratoga. He had contributed a great deal of his personal fortune to equipping troops all the way back to 1775 in the Quebec expedition, but he and that personal fortune had been ruined. Not only had he spent a lot of it in support of the cause, he was unable to conduct private business while he was serving as an officer. So his shipping business and his other private business interests were in complete disarray. And he would apply for recompense to Congress, but his not only was his record keeping not great to begin with, how are you going to keep receipts in the middle of the Maine wilderness when you're marching on Canada through a howling wilderness? Is Tom Desjardins' book about the March on Quebec, and that's exactly it. How are you going to maintain your records to submit for reimbursement? And so he did not have. Not only was the records poorly kept, I don't think it's because he couldn't keep records, that he was a businessman prior to the war. It's just how are you going to do that in a combat situation? So, but Congress is demanding accurate receipts. So he's unable to recoup even parts of his losses. And so he's slowly those grievances go from I have a real complaint here to I deserve to be recompensed by any means necessary. It's going from legitimate grievance to I'm entitled to something and I'm going to get it.
Now, was he getting paid still after he was wounded? Was he still under, salary, I guess they would
Oh yeah,
call
he's
it?
he's he's still a commissioned officer. He's not off
Yeah.
the rolls, but what he's getting from his pay and entitlements does not come close to what he invested in terms of his personal fortune. So he had been hoping for Congress to reimburse him above and beyond his standard pay in order to be able to make good the losses that he had suffered.
Yeah.
It would be like
Got
if you mortgaged your house to raise a regiment and
Yep.
then you wanted to be reimbursed for the cost of that regiment by Congress. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. We'll pay you your salary each month, but the, $300,000 you invested into your regiment, that's on you.
Yeah. 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 And understandable during that time, right? Like I said, the sacrifice was not between just him, but so many other people who sacrificed their homes, their land, their families, their money, their own money to fight and give to what this cause was fighting for.
No, that's exactly it. And we know the phrase associated with the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. They risked their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what the officers of the Continental Army did as well. The cause was greater than any one man, and you were expected to sacrifice for that cause. And the idea that you would be 100% made whole because of your sacrifices kind of was an anathema to the revolutionary spirit.
Now,
Now,
do you know if Benedict Arnold started requesting to be refunded after Quebec, or was it? Do you know when he
He
was
was
requesting?
throughout his career, he was
It
submitting
was.
receipts and requesting some type of reimbursement. This stuff did not happen post Saratoga.
Yeah,
That's where these grievances were being nursed from the get-go. He really felt that Congress had it in for him, Benedict Arnold, personally.
gotcha.
So we know that he is appointed to the military governorship of Philadelphia after he recovers from his wounds, and he kind of treats that like his own personal kingdom almost. So it's, now it's 1778, 1779, and he does maintain a very extravagant lifestyle, and he uses his ability to make things happen in the public interest to also align his personal profits. Like an example would be if he has to take military wagons with military stores and deliver those stores to the troops, but then the wagons are empty. So he directs the wagons, which have been paid for at public expense. Hey, now load up these goods that I've bought privately and bring them to my warehouse. And so he feels that, well, those wagons are under my command. I can do as I wish, but they've been paid for at public expense. And now you're using them to move your private goods for your private business. And now you
Gotcha.
don't have to pay transportation costs. So you're
Right. Yeah.
increasing your profit, but you're doing so at the public's expense. That's how he was, that's an example of how he would mix his private interests with his authority and his government duties. And that was offensive to Joseph Reed and other men who ran the Pennsylvania and Philadelphia administrations. The colony of Pennsylvania was embracing a very radical republicanism. after 1776. They were like, hey, this not only do we feel that republicanism is the way to go, but it was almost like a real power to the people, and we're going to keep an eye on public officials and ensure that they are not forming some type of a new aristocracy or taking advantage of the public trust. And Reed really zeroed in on Arnold. Part of it was he was doing some nefarious stuff, like that. The example of the wagons is patently a conflict of interest.
Yep.
I'm also of the opinion, though, that Reed had had a lackluster military career prior to re-entering the Pennsylvania government, and he
Yep.
had been an aide to Washington during the 1776 campaign. He was nothing wrong with him, but he was not a combat soldier, and he was certainly not a hero. And I think there might have been some personal resentment mixed in with doing his job at providing oversight to what was happening. So a little bit was like, okay, this does need to be investigated. And a little bit of it was, I'm glad it's Arnold we're investigating, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
very zealous in my pursuit of him. So they went looking for stuff to find, and they found some stuff that needed to be investigated and brought to light, but they were very zealous. And at this point, Arnold really feels like, okay, I am being persecuted by men lesser than me. He gets very, very resentful at this point because ultimately Reed's charges are going to require a hearing in front of a court martial.
And now, what were they say? Were they pretty much in our terms, or layman's terms, nitpicking at small things that he thought that they were doing wrong or whatever? You know what I mean?
I
So
mean, I wouldn't call it nitpicking, but I would say it didn't rise to the level that you needed to ruin a man's career or attack his honor. You could have been like, hey, man, we need to handle this, but it could be handled discreetly. Like, just
gotcha.
knock it off. It was not handled discreetly. It was handled very publicly, and it was embarrassing to Arnold.
Now, did they accuse him of things that actually were not true? For instance, like taking things from people's houses or taking things that were not his. You know, like we all know the show Turn. They accused him at one point for taking things that belong to other people. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to put this in the most historical way I can. Accusations were treated as evidence. So even if they were found to be without grounds in a court-martial proceeding, they were still included in the proceedings rather than, okay, there's accusations. Now we have to ensure there's evidence.
Gotcha.
Does that make
So it's
sense?
not like yeah, it's not like today where you have to be proven guilty in a court of law or something like that, right?
Well, it was
You,
certainly I am in no way a legal scholar to anyone who's
yep.
listening, but the rules were basically the same. It's just that they were really bent in this situation. It was like, hey,
Gotcha.
uh, he took candy from a baby, add that to the charge sheet. We'll figure it out
Gotcha.
later. Any rumor or
Gotcha.
innuendo, let's throw it in there.
So pretty much they wanted added as much stuff possible to make him look like a bad guy in there.
Exactly. Let's throw everything in there and see what we can make stick. Now,
Gotcha.
again, there were things that needed to be investigated, but that zealousness I alluded to earlier was
Yeah.
certainly made it seem very personal to Arnold.
Gotcha.
Now, during this time, we know he becomes close to the Shippen family. They were loyalists. They had ties to the occupation of Philadelphia. Peggy Shippen, the infamous femme fatale that we know Arnold married, she had ties to John Andre, for example. And because he was the military governor, Arnold needed to know these people. These were the society and the movers and shakers within the city of Philadelphia. But he became very comfortable with that upper class lifestyle. It was something that he had always aspired to. And now he has this governorship and he's accepted as somebody with authority and somebody who needs to be feted by these people. So it's like the acceptance he had always craved, even back before the war, when he was striving to rise above his father's alcoholism and become a man of means. And now he's being included in this high society of Philadelphia, and that turns his head a little bit too. And this is where he falls in love and marries Peggy Shippen. I'm not saying that she was the catalyst for what he was doing, because he was already an aggrieved person who was trying to recoup his fortunes, but now he's also the wounded hero who's marrying the beautiful woman half his age. It all kind of feeds in to this
Yeah.
perfect storm of conditions. And I think she was a prize for him to win, and sort of a trophy. And he had lost his wife. We knew that as well. And so I think I don't want to judge any man who is trying to get over that kind of grief, but it was probably not the relationship he needed to add to his list of problems as he was going into the late 1770s. Because
Well,
Peggy gets very much tied up in what's happening here. So we know that Reed brings charges, and because he's a military governor, these charges are heard before a court martial. There were two minor convictions, although most of the charges, as we said, had been presented without strong evidence. The court martial dismissed it. And because the convictions had to be addressed, and Washington addressed them in the most lenient way he could by giving him a mild reprimand. It'd be like a letter of reprimand that would go into your 201 file. Uh, it,
gotcha.
not even a UCMJ kind of action, but anything other than complete vindication was going to insult Arnold. So now he feels as though, okay, even Washington has betrayed me at this point. He doesn't see it like, okay, I screwed up. The boss slapped my wrist. Now let me get my stuff in a group and soldier on. He's like, okay, I have been betrayed by my closest advocate. Washington has reprimanded me publicly. My honor is completely stripped, and I need to do what's best for Arnold at this point. I owe no more allegiance to Washington. Owe no more allegiance to this cause. I only owe allegiance to Arnold. That's how I feel he felt at this point.
So pretty much, it seems like Arnold was more concerned about his reputation than actually the Patriot cause.
I think so too. I do think this is again personal opinion. I think
Yeah,
he cared deeply for the Patriot cause when he first entered into it,
yeah,
but his personal outcomes were tied to the success of that cause. He never, even though he acted bravely and he acted in a spirit of sacrifice, that impeccable war record between 1775 and 1777, even if we take that into account, it was never without this idea that he was furthering his own interests as well, and that his sacrifices demanded acknowledgement. That was the
gotcha.
key. His mentality was if you did not agree with his own assessment of himself, you were somehow insulting him. And
Okay.
anytime his honor was affronted, whatever he did to correct that affront was morally okay to him.
Did he ever like admit to any wrongdoing at any time? You know, like to saying, yeah, maybe I should have done, something smaller. Do you know any record or anything like that?
You're asking a great question, and my preparation did not go that deep. I'm of
Okay.
the opinion that on his deathbed, he did regret what he did. But
Yeah.
again, I'm going to tie that to how posterity was going to remember him versus
Yeah.
any true sense of, oh, I betrayed the
Really,
cause.
man. Gotcha. Absolutely.
So now Arnold reaches out through his connections with the Shippen family to the British High Command, offering his services in any way that he could be of use to the British cause. West Point didn't come first. The overture, he's still in Philadelphia when he starts making these overtures. And then eventually he decides the best thing that he can do would be to offer something of tangible value, not just himself, but hey, if I can give you something of tangible value to the British cause, will you recompense me? And he determines upon if he can get the commandantship of West Point, which is the major strategic key to the Hudson River, that is something that would be of great interest to Sir Henry Clinton, who's now the commander in chief in North America for the British. And that is going to be his key to entering into British service. And so he arranges to be appointed to that commandantship. And that's something Washington is willing to give him. Obviously, Philadelphia has not been a success. It doesn't look good for the Continental Army, in addition to not looking so great for Arnold. So it's closer to a combat command. It's, command of a defensive position. It doesn't require the political sensitivity that the governorship does. So it seems to make sense to Washington. So Arnold gets moved into the role of the commander at West Point in 1780.
Which is crazy because you figure, well, if he gets told that he's going to take command of West Point, he'd be all right. I'm going to stay. I'm not gonna go to the other side because it sees that he might be able to get more into another battlefield role.
Well,
You know,
exactly. But I think this point he is all in. Like he
yeah.
knows that he's going to get prestige from the British. He's going to get rank from the British. He's going to get money from the British. This is like at this point he's convinced himself that
Okay.
His honor does not allow him to continue in the service of the revolution. I think I find it very convoluted that he can conflate treason with honor, but he's
Yeah.
managed to make this case to himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So we've discussed the value of the Hudson River in the past. It connects Canada to the 13 lower colonies. It connects the interior of New York to the Atlantic Ocean. It connects the New England colonies to the middle colonies, or the New England states to the middle states. It is truly a strategic avenue of approach, a strategic maneuver corridor, and a logistics lifeline between the upstate and the coastal region. So you can move men, you can move material, you can maneuver between areas of operation. It is a vital waterway. West Point overlooks the river at a strategic point where you can create a choke point, and it's a position that needs to be properly manned. And when he takes over this position, he intends to turn it over to the British by weakening it, stripping it of men, ensuring the defenses are not up to speed, ensuring it's not properly stocked with supplies. Yeah, he's going to provide maps. He's going to ensure it's going to be an easy target. He negotiates his term with the British, and he's actually going to betray his own troops.
Yeah, it's just kind of frustrating, the more and more we go, right? You see it directly from Arnold being this loyal patriot to fighting for the great cause. And because he gets mistreated, he doesn't get the praise he deserves, so-called, he goes from one loyal patriot now to a loyal, British officer, right? And it's
Exactly.
frustrating. You can literally see it stretching out.
Exactly. And this map is great. You can see the Hudson River here. This is literally an iron chain of great lengths that could be spread between the shoreline and Constitution Island that can prevent navigation by big ships up and down the river. They
So
have
Ben,
defensive
real quick,
positions.
when Grace and I went up to West Point, they still had that chain there.
That's amazing. That is
Right.
awesome. You're
Yeah.
gonna have to put some photos up in the
Yeah.
links. But you can see this is where the garrison would be located. This is where the defensive positions overlooking the chain would be. It's just a very strategic point. So John Andre, as pretty much everybody who's a student knows, is Clinton's chief of intelligence, and he handles this particular piece of intelligence work personally. He arrives up the Hudson River aboard a ship called His Majesty's Ship Vulture. He meets on shore with Arnold. He receives paperwork associated with those plans, and then he moves overland back towards his own lines. He's traveling under a pass with an assumed name, uh, signed by Arnold, but he is apprehended very close to his own lines by irregular troops who are loyal to the Patriot cause. He at first
How,
thought he was running into like Delancey's Cowboys or some similar loyalist unit, and he kind of passes himself off as a loyalist. And they're like, "Oh, hey, guess what, buddy? Uh, you picked wrong." And Paulding, Van Vart, and Williams are the names of the three militiamen, and they search him and they find the plans to West Point hidden in Andre's boot, and he is turned over to the Continental Army authorities as a very least a captured British officer, but he is brought up on charges of espionage because he is not overtly a British officer. His pass has the wrong name. I've read that he had his uniform on, but under civilian outer clothes. So he was still attempting to pass himself off as somebody who's not, look at me, I'm a serving British officer. If he had just said, hey, I'm John Andre and I'm wearing my red coat, he might have got away with not being tried and condemned as a spy.
yeah. Now those were the Skinners, I believe, right? Were
Yes,
those Skin?
that was the name of the given to most of the Patriot militia.
Yeah.
So while Andre is getting hemmed up, Arnold receives a warning that Andre has been captured because one of his aides reports in the part of his routine duties. It's not like, "Hey, boss, the jig's up and we got to get out of here."
Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, sir, a British spy was captured down on the southern part of our area of operations earlier today." Arnold realizes what that means for him. He's dining with his wife Peggy, who's with child. And says, "Hey, they may have pity on you as a pregnant woman, but I need to get out of here." Circumstantially, Washington and a party of inspection is coming to West Point that day. So this is the not very good timing for Arnold. So he leaves his meal. He rides to the Hudson. He urges some of his men to row him out. to the Vulture, which is anchored in the Hudson, and he makes it there. Later, when Washington receives word Arnold's defection, he's like, "Whom can we trust now? If we can't trust my most valued combat commander, can I trust any of my subordinate officers?" So Andre is tried for espionage, found guilty. There's only one penalty for espionage in the 18th century, and that's death by hanging. There is a very strong backlash. Well, backlash might be too tough a term, but there's a lot of Washington's officers intercede for Andre. Not like, oh, let the guy go, but he made a very favorable impression during his court martial. He's a gentleman, he's educated, he's showing a remarkable bravery and presence of mind under these circumstances. And like, he deserves a soldier's death. Could he be condemned to die by firing squad? Something, hanging is something that is done to criminals. He's not a criminal. He's an honorable soldier. And Washington feels as though he's bound by the rules of war and the traditions that despite Andre's merit, he cannot go against the traditional punishment. There's a lot of folks that you'll see on the internet who are like, oh, he was trying to get revenge for Nathan Hale. I don't see it as such. I think Washington truly felt constrained as a general of an army that was trying to be seen as legitimate before other similar Atlantic armies, the French, the British, that he needed to adhere to the rules of warfare. And so
was Congress involved in this at all?
Now this is purely a military matter. This is well within Washington's authority as the commander in chief.
Perfect.
So Andre dies. Arnold lives. He's going to get a commission as a brigadier general. He's going to get money, even though West Point did not fall into British hands. Clinton holds up his end of the deal, but he's never considered an honorable man. Now, Peggy Shippen has a mental breakdown upon learning of Arnold's departure as she breaks down in front of General Washington and Alexander Hamilton. There are those who say that this was a ruse to protect her and be seen as a victim, not as an accomplice. There's evidence that she was truly acting, in some instances, reports of her own words, conversations she had with friends later. But she's returned to her family. And eventually will join Arnold in England. Arnold is now a serving British officer, but he is definitely a tragic figure and a curse among Americans now. Like we said at the beginning of this, that Benedict Arnold's attempt to sell West Point has become synonymous with treason in the American language now. There was a lot of officers, you point out, Nathaniel Greene, who was financially impacted by the war, and he's just one among many, but only Arnold is one who attempted this act of betrayal in order to assuage what he felt was his offended honor and his damaged finances. So there's the story of the treason of the blackest die. And we got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I'll say one thing real quick. So one thing I read was that Benedict Arnold, after he left for England, never came back to American soil. The closest he came was back to Canada. That was it. Never came back to American soil. And that he died. And right now, his crypt, and he's buried next, I think his daughter and his wife, Peggy, are buried in a crypt in a church that is now our kindergarten. I remember looking at a picture, of it, and right next to his crypt is like a little 5-year-old drawing of a fish in a little, aquarium. So it makes you wonder, they really, really must like him over there then, huh?
Well, he's not considered a hero to them either. He's a man who performed heroically, who's in no way a hero in the public memory in either cause that he served.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad because he did sacrifice his leg.
Exactly.
Right? Twice.
Exactly. So there it is, guys. The third and final installment of the downfall of Benedict Arnold. I'm Ben Powers with my buddy Bjorn Brusckshaw, and this has been Rogue Island.
Have a great one, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.